Hey there, and welcome to Large Format Friday. I'm your host, Matt Marrash. If this is the first time you're stopping by the channel, here's a playlist of our entire second season of LFF. And if you haven't subscribed yet, each and every Friday, we're gonna be here and we're gonna be talking about something large format. But right now, sun just came up. I'm here at Blackhand Gorge, here about an hour east of Columbus, and I'm gonna hit the trail because there's a little bit of haze, really nice and chill, and there's no wind, so let's get some shots. Well, this is about as good a time as any. Let's go ahead and set up a warm-up shot. I'm really surprised that there was some fog this morning. I saw nothing on the forecast except partly cloudy and meh weather, but pleasantly surprised there was a bigger temperature swing overnight, and that gives us some fog. I complain about all the haze that we have here in Ohio, but sometimes it gives us mornings like this, so can't be too salty. Not seeing as wide this morning. Now, last week, some of you guys had questions about what do you do when it is cold? Like, what do you do with your lenses? The best thing you can let your optics do is acclimate to the temperature. So if it's really, really cold, just let them get used to that really, really cold. Wow, it is so hazy this morning. I might not even need to use a blue filter, but because you guys keep asking about filters, I'm probably gonna take 2 copies of the warm-up shot. One to show what happens when you use the blue filter versus what happens when you don't. So the highlight on the haze, some tree bark, and some of these mossy areas near the tree bark. I shouldn't have a whole heck of a lot of dynamic range. 5 stops even, that's perfect. I'll be able to get everything on there. And I want my middle values to fall around the f45 area. So that's gonna give me a metered exposure of 4 seconds with no filter, giving me a 16-second reciprocity time. By the way, again, we're running with Ilford FP4+. I'm just gonna finish off the box that I have of this stuff. Nice. Okay. Nice. So that deep blue filter, it's deep blue, and it's gonna have a filter factor of 3.5 stops, which means we're gonna have to compensate to our exposure 3.5 f-stops. I'm gonna help our exposure out a little bit by opening up 2 f-stops on the lens, so I don't have to leave my exposure open all day long. And because we've got so long on the clock, we're also going to put the dark cloth over the back. There we go, got her in there. So all I'm really trying to do here is show the framing that the tree already gives me of the trail. Now the tree is slanted a little bit, and sometimes it's cool to straighten out that slant, but since I have other trees that are kind of referencing it in the background, I'll go ahead and let that slant kind of happen. Now, I don't like to include a whole ton of floor if I need to, but you also don't want to just be like cutting off the tree before you see where it comes out of the earth. So it's just all a matter of framing. When you're using something like a really wide lens, like this one's a pretty wide lens that has an okay image circle, I'm gonna have to stop down my lens to at least f22, maybe even f32 to get the full coverage of that lens. So when I apply the movements, I'm not getting a cutoff or a little bit vignette from running out of image circle. All right, we've got ourselves 2 seconds of metered exposure time. So we're gonna give her 8, just to make sure. And like a good foggy morning. This is great. I'm not even on the right part of the trail and I still want to shoot everything I'm looking at. So the fog is clearing rapidly and I'm getting just a little bit more of that haze. The sun has been up for about an hour now, so it's going to be gone any moment. I just wanted to try and frame up one more shot that includes some of it and helps me get some contrast here. So in front of me here is a composition that could definitely benefit from the use of a little bit of swing. What I could do is focus on one of the trees at the very back of the trail and then start swinging my lens and refocusing in and out to try and find a point at which I can match a tree in the very back of the trail to the tree trunk right up here. When you start applying movements, specifically swings and tilts, you can still only focus on a two-dimensional slice of that 3D world. So if I move my slice along the vertical axis using my swing, I can only go this way and focus on that plane. So any other objects that are protruding out in front of that plane, like these little pine needles on this forward-facing branch, those might get really distorted or just wildly out of focus. So although it seems really boring, I'm just gonna go with a really high F number and try to get as far back as I can. All right, tree trunk in front of me, pine needles, some of that white protruding haze, some lighter leaves, some middle tone regions of the trail. So we have f-stops ranging from 22 to 90, smidge more than a 5-stop spread. If I want to hit a f64 though, I'm going to need about 30 seconds of exposure after my compensation for reciprocity failure. 30 seconds. Definitely got more moisture coming in now. So we're not too far from where our last shot was. We're actually just maybe 100 yards away, but right now the sun is still peeking up. So I can see where the sun is poking through, but I still have a really nice diffuse shadow area, and this is gonna make for a really neat scenic that you're not ordinarily gonna get without starting to do crazy things to push up your shadows, HDR, that sort of thing. So I put my wide lens on, I'm just trying to capture all of this from the brightest parts of the scene to the darkest, and hopefully some of the vignetting of my super wide lens is gonna help me knock down that brightest corner. Dark shadow in there. So this is going to have an obscenely large dynamic range, but again, the highlights, I'm going to let those fall where they are. I need to get my shadows properly placed. And to get my shadows where I want them to be, my working aperture is going to be, I'm going to go 32.5. And with f32.5, that puts me at 4 seconds or about 16 seconds. Reveal some of it. Insert dark slide. Yeah, we're okay. Pull out, dark slide, recover, wait out any shake, and all right. So one thing I was anticipating needing today, not necessarily for the shots I'm doing now, but for the other side of the gorge, which hopefully we'll have some time to get to, is the longer lens. Last week I didn't bring it along because I knew I was going to be really up close with everything, but today I know I'm going to need to be a little bit further out. So I did bring my telephoto. This is the Nikkor 600T. It's a telephoto design, meaning it's going to take less than 600 millimeters of bellows to achieve 600 millimeters of focus. And this is good for things like this folding field camera, which barely has 600 millimeters of bellows. When you're using a very long lens, it's going to magnify everything you do, good and bad. So you want to make sure everything is locked down as tight as possible. One, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. How long was that? Oh my gosh, okay. So we just did a little over 4 miles on arguably the wrong trail, but it's all right. Let's head over to the part that I wanted to go to and we'll see what we can get. All right, so after a couple miles of driving, I'm at the other side of the river here, and we're gonna take the Gorge Trail right along here, hopefully get some nice views of the rocks, and hopefully our sun is still a little bit tame. So I'm set up over here opposite the large rock face, which is what Blackhand Gorge is known for. And I'm doing a bit of an unconventional shot. I'm getting this side of the rock face kind of leading up the trail. There's some nice light raking in behind and just a little bit, maybe a little bit more contrast than I want because now there's no clouds, there's no haze, it's just a blue sky. But I think the vignette of my wide angle lens will help me take care of that as well as just kind of open up the trail. So similar to last week, I'm going to knock down some of that really bright highlight coming in from the side using my Grad ND or Graduated Neutral Density filter. Going down to f32. We're going to have 8 seconds on the clock. All right, let's try and get some of this rock face. Okay. Adapter ring. When it comes to metering, we have a couple of different options. We can place the filter directly over our spot meter and find it there. But if you know the filter factor, you can just go ahead and use that metered filter factor as well. That won't hurt. This is a red 25, so 2.5 stops is what I'm gonna need to compensate. So the target f-stop I'm looking to get my exposure to is f16, and let's find where our exposure time is. Let's get a half second on the clock. You know, it's a real shame that there was so much graffiti down there by the rock. That was one of my favorite parts about Blackhand Gorge the first couple of times I visited. But it's all right. We still made it work with the compositions that we had down there. We're gonna head back toward the car. Let's see what we can make of some of this really bright light and some of the shadows. So we're dealing with another tricky scene here where I have some really cool mossy rocks that are leading up and out of the frame. So not only am I going to use a generous amount of swing, I'm also going to stop down the lens a little bit, because if I just use the swing, I'm going to get these weird slivers of focus that are going to run through these trees, which are running vertically. So remember, I can only focus on one two-dimensional plane at a time. Instead of this straight up and down, I'm swinging it along here, and then I'm also going to stop down, which is going to give me a little bit more depth of field. Need a half second. Since we applied movements, go ahead and make sure all of that's locked down. Never hurts to do a dry fire. Oh man. Whew. Oh. Whew. I am gonna need a nap after this. Well, we saw two completely different types of light here today at Blackhand Gorge. Over on one side of the water, we got a lot of fog and mist right as the sun came up, and as soon as the sun was up, we headed over to the other side, saw the rock face, got a lot of hard sun in there, reacted to that. And we logged a little bit between 5 and 6 miles today on the trail, a little bit larger than last week. Whew, I'm gonna need to sleep this one off. But before I go, I wanted to thank everybody who's supported the channel thus far. We hit a really big milestone today, 5,000 subscribers. So if you're one of them, thank you so much for continuing to watch and support the channel. It means a whole lot to me that there's this many folks that are interested in large format photography. And to celebrate our 5K subs milestone, I'm gonna have another episode of Large Format Live this coming Sunday in the afternoon. So if you aren't already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and hit that little bell notification so you'll know when I'm going live. So stay tuned. If you have any burning questions about LFF or just the large format process, that'll be the perfect time to get those answered live. And for any long form questions that you don't want to hear on the air, you can always feel free to shoot me an email, largeformatquestions@gmail.com. Thanks again for stopping by. It means so much that you're here enjoying large format photography with me, and we'll catch you next time for more LFF.